All right, welcome back to day three of Foundations of Programming. We're gonna pick up from where we left off yesterday. At closing, we talked about going over the BBC website. You did have the option to try to replicate the image that was given to you within the curriculum, or to choose the much more recent version of the BBC website, or if you had something else you want to try, you could have done that too. Now, really, the whole goal of the BBC website recreation using only HTML, it's not because you're just trying to actually recreate the whole thing, but it's to be able to look at an application and then see how it's actually built, right? And understanding the structure of an HTML document, right? Practicing the tags that correspond to specific locations, right? Um, and we can kind of talk a little bit about what I mean real quickly, and then we can take one of you two here to give us a demonstration of what you guys may have came up with. It's not going to look like the BBC website. I acknowledge that 100% because we don't have CSC, what am I saying? CSS or JavaScript. So that's to be expected. But for example, I'm looking at this image here, right? Uh, well, not the image. I'm the actual BBC website. Let's ignore the ad up here, right? I wouldn't consider this part of the website. Let's scroll down. But the first thing that you see here at the very top of this website, what would you think this would be called?
Header.
Yeah, this is definitely a header, right? This header has a couple things here. We see here there's some kind of button. It's like a navigation bar slash drop down window. To the right of that, we have a button that lets you see something live. I don't know what they're streaming live. After that, we have a huge space, followed by oh, Richard, stand by. Richard, if you gotta go, man, that's okay too. Family comes first.
No, he's good. He's home. Just had a little fender bender.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, just disclaimer to all of you guys, if like I said, class isn't mandatory, family comes first. I do want to see you guys here every single day, but if you guys have something come up, don't feel guilty about it. Give me a heads up if you guys do miss a whole day. I like to receive a notice just so I'm aware. Because then I hate being ghosted. I think we all do. Like, all right, you can at least tell me like, you don't want to talk to me anymore. You don't want to be here anymore. That's fine. Just tell me up front, hey, Roger, hey, it was great. Thank you for your time. I think I'm gonna go ahead and work on my own for a while until the cohort starts. But I really appreciate your time, and I will see hopefully I see you again someday. And we'll call it a day, right? So if you guys ever do have to go and no longer want to participate in the program, that's all I ask for. I prefer that over being ghosted. But let's go ahead and continue back. I should be sharing the BBC website, I believe. Let me double check. I am okay. So within this header, in the middle, we have an image. To the right of that, we have two buttons, right? Now, really here, this is one big box, right? And this box is probably done using a div, a division, right? Which is it's a semantic tag that's supposed to represent just a section, some kind of part of your application. This part right here specifically is just for the header, right? So it has header content, right? Like the logo, sign-in buttons, right? A navigation button. That's very common within header sections. Right below this huge box, which is the header, we have another box right below it. This is another form of a nav bar, right? This nav bar has multiple other buttons. Um, Now let's look at what it actually looks like. I can use the development tools on Chrome, and I can show you more about how this works. But notice real quickly when I highlight over the image on the website, you can see the outline of the tags or the elements that are being used for this HTML document. This gives you a much better visual representation that everything on your browser is really just a box, right? So we have one big box, which is the entire header, right? And this one big box has three other boxes, right? You notice that there's a box for the left side, the box for the right side, and the box for the center. The box in the center is holding the logo, so it has an image tag, right? So there's three divs inside this one div, right? This is one big div, that holds three other divs, and within each div, they have other smaller divs, right? We have one div for this drop down button. We have one div for the watch live. Um, there's definitely an image here. I don't know if they, how can I grab the image for it? Oh, there is the image. Um, Here is the div for the right side where the sign in and subscribe button is. There's buttons here. Uh, the Chrome tools for the developers can actually show you what the website is built off of. For example, if I were to click right here, the navbar, it shows me where in the HTML document for this web page is located at. Notice this is a div. It's a division, right? I can hover over the content of this div and it highlights the different parts of the stuff inside of this div. Right? Inside of this big div, which is the header, there's three other divs. And I guessed it correctly, like I told you earlier, right? There's three individual divs within here, one for each section. Let's open up the far left div that has the drop down in the watch live. It has a button and another div. This div has another div within it, and it's just like nested divs. Divs, once again, short for division. It just helps format like-minded content or like items, if that makes sense, right? You know, if you're sorting your stuff together, I'm gonna put everything that belongs to this article should be in this div. Everything that belongs to this article should be in this div. Everything that belongs to a navbar should just be in one big div. Everything that belongs to the header should be in this one big div. Everything for the footer should be in one big div. And then there's individual divs within these divs. So that was really the main point for the BBC website is being able to break this website down into smaller chunks and then give it the corresponding tags that are relevant to it. For example, look at the nav bar, right? When I highlight over this nav tag here, you can see it's for the nav bar. They could have easily made a div for all this, but they use a semantic nav tag because although the nav tag and the div tag are technically the same thing, it's called nav because we're using it for specifically the navigation purposes. So it helps me as a developer know that this is probably for navigation content. There's even like a section tag in here. Let's look at the article. I wonder if there are any article tags on that. Um, I guess these. I see one here. Oh no, did I miss it? Where is it at? Article. Okay. Notice that this is an article tag. So I put everything in here as article. All these articles. So it could join all these multiple articles into one big article tag. And this article tag has multiple subdivs within it, right? But notice the fact that they used an article tag, another semantic tag to represent where the articles go, right? So articles went inside the article tag. Everything involved with the navigation bar is in the nav tag. Everything inside the header is in its individual div. I don't so they even have a header tag. See, header. So they use the corresponding tags for the corresponding information, like items with like items, and that was what you were supposed to really do. Just try to recreate different sections of the BBC website using the corresponding tags. Um, does anybody want to present real quickly how far they got onto the assignment? And I know it's not going to be sexy, and that's okay.
I'll do it.
All right.
Sorry, I have it up on the other screen.
Oh, nice. Okay. Right on. Yeah. You did really well. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And you got the whole nav stuff at the very top. That is
Yeah, these are
that is
workable and open new tabs.
that is sick, man. Yeah, you're right on. You did great. That is it's actually a lot better than I expected any of you guys to do. Which I'm sorry to say that. I didn't expect much from you guys, but that's pretty good. That's really
Thank
cool.
you.
I love it. It's good to see it. I'm excited to see how giving you the ability to use CSS is going to make this better. Uh, you put in a lot of work, Richard, on this, and I know that because of how much or with the time that you messaged me. So good stuff.
Yeah, I was working on it for a while, and I was like, I have to ask this question, otherwise I might kick myself if I did this wrong. So
I see you gave it classes. Are you aware what these classes are doing? Do you have any
yeah, that's
familiarity
for
with?
CSS styling. I've done some CSS classes, so I know
Okay,
that that's going to help me in the styling portion.
okay, all right. I was just double checking. All right, right on. Yeah, pretty good. See, if someone sees this and you feel like, oh man, mine sucks compared to Richard, just know that Richard has experience with it, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, I've probably read 5 books on CSS and taken 3 different classes on it, so I'm familiar with it.
Okay. All right, right on. Thank you for that, Richard. That
Yep.
looks great. I'm actually blown away. Good stuff.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh,
Go ahead and stop your sharing, and we're gonna go into the official lesson for today. This might take us all day. I might just keep it all for today and then have JavaScript for tomorrow, for the sake of ensuring that we have enough time to practice with CSS. But our first lesson for today, which I believe is pretty good because we're right on track, it's gonna be CSS. CSS. Now stand by. I just remember I don't have my VS Code open. Make sure you have your VS Code open to the curriculum, because we will be going to assignments as we're learning CSS. Um, CSS is not something you can just watch and expect to get it. You definitely have to give it a try. All right. So CSS. What is CSS and where does it go? Well, CSS is an acronym that stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Uh, CSS is how we style our web pages. If you guys recall from yesterday's imagery, was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. We said that HTML was the structure of your web page, right? If we were using that human body as an analogy, that was the skeleton, right? It was the skeleton of your person. CSS is the styling, right? So that's like the outside appearance of that person, right? Their hair color, hair length, eyes, eye width, height, spacing in your teeth, right? All that is CSS. It is how we style our web pages, right? That's what makes it pretty. So really, you can have an entire website and have no CSS and it works just fine. It's just going to be ugly. Um, a lot of times people get hyperfixated with CSS before they even have a working website. When working with CSS, you typically want to ensure you only have enough so you can work with it. For example, like maybe like a border, a background, so you can identify where stuff is at. But you shouldn't really hyperfixate on CSS until you're close to the end of your project. We want to focus on the functionality first. CSS has different ways of how it is used. And by saying what I mean when I say how it is used is how we connect it to the project, right? How does an HTML file know how the styling works, right? There's two ways that you can implement CSS. The very first one uh, that you probably have seen, and the way I don't recommend is going to be the inline CSS. And what I mean by that is in the creation of a tag, right? Take this H1 tag, for example, on this code snippet that says hello world. An inline CSS would be adding an attribute to the opening tag called style, right? And then inside that attribute, they would start adding the styling for it. That's not good. We'll talk a little bit about it later of why it's not good. Can you do it? Absolutely. Is it encouraged? Uh, no, not at all. If anything, you want to use it very sparingly. And we'll talk about the reason why you should use it very sparingly. First and foremost, it's ugly, right? Especially because CSS, it can get very long. You don't want to add a bunch of CSS to an already crowded document like HTML when you have all this other content. The last thing you need is to add even more text to your tags. It just confuses you. But we'll talk about later as why it's important that we don't do that. Uh, 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 mm, Give me a second. All right. But the other way and the way that you guys are going to be doing it from here on out is going to be by adding the style uh page onto your head tag, right? So we talked about the structure of your HTML. One of the parts or components of your structure is going to be the head tag, right? That is your metadata section, right? Where you put stuff like the title, the viewport, you could put language, um, you will connect other different things there. You can change the font there as well. Uh, but this is where you would link other files to the HTML document. That is how your HTML document knows how to use a third-party file or an external file, really, is the term for it. And you see that here, right? And
I
that is
I
done.
was I was wondering, Roger, does it have to be in the same, say, directory, or can it be in a different f folder somewhere? And if you link to it, it's going to use it.
It does not have to be in the same directory. It just needs to know how to find it. For example, if it's in the same directory, all you have to do is give it the name and .css because it doesn't have to look for it because it's right there. If it's two files up or down somewhere else nested within another directory, you have to provide that file path here in the href section, right? So you have to specify what file you have to go into and nest your way through to find it in relationship to the HTML file itself. So it doesn't have to be right next to it. You just need to know how, you just have to tell your HTML file how to find it. Does that make sense?
Cool. Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. So the way that we connect this is by the link tag. Notice this is not one of your regular tags that's open and closing. It doesn't even have the forward slash, so it should work just as fine if you just say link with the open and closing angle brackets inside of the opening tag. There's two attributes you add here. One is the relationship that your style sheet has in right? Or like what type of link is this? What file are you connecting to this? Well, this is a style sheet, right? And then you're gonna specify where the style sheet is located at and what it is called within the href. That is how your HTML file is able to locate what styling it should use in corresponding to itself. All right. Before we go on, there is another way that you can do it. We talked about inline CSS, so inline styling. We talked about how to connect the external one using the link tag, but there is the ability to do this, which is opening a style tag within your head, and then just start typing out a bunch of CSS in here. That's still not recommended either. Going back to the golden rule of three that we talked about yesterday, which is a separation of concerns when it comes to your application. Keep CSS separated from your HTML, separated from your JavaScript, all within its own files. You want to do that. Now, if it's a very, very, very small application and it's like simple, would it hurt to just have it there? Probably not. That's fine. But most websites, they're gonna scale them. They're gonna get bigger. You don't want to have it here. All right. Now let's talk about the syntax, right? CSS syntax. Just like every other language out there, there's grammar that goes to how to write in CSS. Uh, These are the four things that you have to keep in mind. Really, three. The first thing when writing CSS is you need to understand that you have a selector, right? When writing CSS, you have to specify what is the element that you're trying to style, right? What are you selecting that you're about to start editing or styling, right? Your selector can be multiple things. The example you see here is they're grabbing the element itself, right? P. They're styling the paragraph tag. Now, this here is going to change the styling for all paragraph tags. All paragraph tags. So be aware of that. But after you give this a selector, the next step is opening up, if you guys recall the terminology I use in Python, a code block, right? A section where you're going to start adding the attributes or the code that corresponds to the selector. And they do that by using curly braces, hence the opening, closing curly braces. And they put a space so they can start adding the styling within here. After opening and closing the curly braces, you should have the ability where it's automatically indented. And the next two parts of your syntax is going to be the property and the property value. So after you specified what you're trying to select and change, then you specify what property you're trying to change and to what, right? This is saying change the paragraph color to red, right? That's in short, that's how it's read. Paragraph color to red, and then everything will come down as it goes. One thing to note after each declaration, because this is what this is, every property and property value pair, that is one declaration. After each declaration, to go to the next one, you have to finish it with the semicolon. Now, Python doesn't force you to use semicolon, so this might be new to you. If you don't add the semicolon, you're going to get an error. It's not going to work. Uh, so if you're wondering why your styling is not taking into effect, and you just started using CSS recently, chances are it's because you forgot a semicolon there. So, for example, if I wanted to change the color of the paragraph to red, and then I wanted to add a border, I would do the semicolon, next line, I would say border, and then specify the values for that. Do you have any questions on how the CSS syntax looks like? Here's another example. Here is the H1. So the one that we saw on the slide was a paragraph tag. Here we have an H1 tag. They have the open and closing curly braces. They're changing the color to blue. They want to add another declaration, so they add the semicolon and go to the next line. They specify that they want to change the font size and they want to change it to 24 pixels px, right? Once again, syntax selector followed by property value pairs. Another example here, the paragraph tag again, they're changing the color to red, but they're also adding a margin and setting it to 10 pixels. We'll talk about all these different properties and how they work in a little bit. All right, so here's the different examples that I mentioned earlier of how this would look like, of how you can apply CSS. The very first one that I mentioned to you is inline CSS, right? This is directly in the HTML element using the style attribute. So not recommended. Notice here, this is a paragraph tag. This is the opening part of the tag, right? Opening and closing tag. The opening tag, notice how they added a style attribute. And then within the style attribute, they open up quotation marks and they started adding property values in here to different styles. This is just two. They're changing two property values. It's not foreign to have something that needs to be changed with like 10 different things. Now that can get very messy very quickly. So inline styling, this is done very sparingly. We'll talk about why and when this is used, but this is one way of how you can do this. The other way, which is the internal CSS, as I mentioned before, you can open up a style tag within the head and start writing the CSS directly into the HTML file. Notice the syntax is the same, but it's all within a style tag. You don't want to do this either. Once again, separation of concerns, keep the styling within its own file. I'm showing this to you guys because it is a way this will work, and there's people that do this. so you're aware of it. The other way, which is the way that I recommend to you guys, and you will be doing it for the remainder of the course, is by linking it using the link tag. Having the style sheet itself separate, that way you just put all the styling in one page and these linked together. You are able to have like multiple pages here back to back, so you can see one and the other, without having to scroll up and down to find styling and then go back to find HTML elements. It eliminates all that stuff. All right. Now, how do we read CSS? Well, CSS gets its name because of how it works, cascading style sheets. So the way that we read CSS is going to be from top to bottom. What comes further down the page can overwrite what comes before it, right? This is what we call the cascade, right? Hence the name cascading style sheets. Take this code snippet, for example. We have two different styles for the same element, both the paragraph tag. By the first time we declare a style for the paragraph tag, we declare the color to be red, and we set the font weight to bold. We then call the p tag again, but this time we set the color to blue. Now, what is the end result of the paragraph tag? What color would trump what?
Blue would trump red.
Correct. Blue would trump red because blue was the last one written. That's what takes priority, right? Um, so although like I might have wanted red in the past, the most recent color I asked for was blue, so blue will be the color that it will take. What about font weight? What happens to the font weight property set to bold? Does that disappear, Richard?
Shouldn't change. Should keep that property.
Correct. It will keep that property. It won't change anything. Unless I override it, I already declared font weight to be set to bold above. Just because I'm changing something else in the p tag later in my document, as long as I don't change the font weight again, that font weight will stay to what it was declared initially. Cool. When working with styling, you're going to be working with colors a lot. All right, so there's a lot of different ways to write the value of color, and these are the examples of those. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not too knowledgeable on the different color types because I don't use 3/4 of these. I hate it. So just be aware of that. The very first one, which is the most basic way, is you quite literally give it the name of the color. This is useful if you're just staying to a very simple color palette, like the colors on the rainbow, red, blue, green, and so on and so forth, right? Because we all know those colors. Now, if you try to like think of something like, I don't know, fire, turquoise, red, I don't know, something crazy. I don't know if you can do that. When you start getting into more specific colors, you're going to want to use the other options that you see here. And the second option after that would be the hex value. Don't even ask me how it's written or what the heck the letters stand for. I don't know, right? I don't know. Just know that they are color values. Changing the letters and the numbers here will change the color. Nobody knows every color combination off the top of their head. If you do web designing or you do like user experience, you might have a couple colors in the back of your pocket that you might like, that you might remember, but ain't nobody know all these colors. And I'll show you a nice trick that we can use to get a nice color in a bit. The next one, which personally is my favorite one, is the RGBA. This is the one that I use. You quite literally type out RGBA and open up parentheses, and within here you start giving it the color value or the numerical values for that corresponding color. It's in commas. Each section within these parentheses represents each letter. So the R is going to be the first value within the parentheses. The green is a second, and then so on and so forth. B is blue. A stands for opaqueness. That's a range from 0 to 1. That's going to make your items transparent or more visible, depending on what value it is from 0 to 1. So be aware of that. It comes in handy sometimes, especially for like a glowing effect, shadows. That's what I like to use it for. But yeah, RGBA personally is my favorite one. And the other one, which you should be sent to the sleeve room if you use, is the HSLA. I've never used it before either, so don't ask me too much about it. But these are the ones that you will see very often, right? Choose one and run with it. Which one you use is going to be up to you. I don't care. But something that I like to use is an extension on my browser. There's different extensions that you can use. I have one here called Color Picker. If I click this, what it does, it opens up kind of like a palette. Oh, I gotta update it. Okay, whatever. It opens up a color palette right here that I can use to look through different colors. Specifically, if I have like an image, I'm like, oh, I really like that color, and I want to use that color for my background. I'm able to use the dropper and then select something over it. For example, like the color of the header here on the slide, and then it gives me the hex, the HSL, and even the RGB for the CSS, right? Which is pretty cool. So this is something I like to use. You can even get the site palette. So this will give you a palette of all the colors on the page that you're currently on. So there's different extensions that you can use like this to your advantage, or you can just kind of Google like, you know, color theories and color combinations if you want to have already a pre-packaged made color sets. People do that too, and they sell those or they show it for free. It's a whole thing. But yeah, this is a nice tool to use, especially when you first start off and you're trying to design your website and you're trying to think of a nice color theme. There's a whole science that goes behind color theory. I try, you know, getting spun up on it. Um, I suck at it. But you know, you guys can look into it if you want. Awesome.
So it just I'm trying to refresh my memory here. Is the HSLA are those percentages for the like saturation, like for gradient or something like
Yes.
that, or is that
Yes.
okay?
You're absolutely correct. I think H is hue, S is saturation. I don't remember what L is.
And then A is the
Luminance, I
opacity.
believe.
Yeah, I think it's luminance.
All right. So next thing, let's talk about font. Actually, before we even move on, let's try this. Before we even start going to different things, let's give this a try before we even get to font. Let's go ahead and open up our curriculum. I want you to go to lesson 3, um, which is going to be the intro to CSS. In the intro to CSS file, go ahead and create a new file that's going to be called index.html, and then create a second file that's going to be style.css. Right, this is going to be our practice files that we're going to use for uh, our lesson. Okay, cool. All right. Within here, we're going to go to the index.html. Once again, exclamation mark and press tab to get our boilerplate. I'm going to go ahead and send this to Alex. Uh, Alex, did you ever figure that out by any chance?
No, sorry. I've been
Oh,
spamming programming questions. I'm about to take my tech assessment soon.
okay. The Slack channel should still have the message I last sent you.
Yeah,
Just use that.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so there is my HTML document created. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna move this to the left side, and I'm gonna put my browser on my right. And let's go ahead and minimize this a little bit. I'm gonna open this bad boy with live server or 5 server now. So I changed that one. And it should open up here. Right on. It's blank, obviously, because I don't have anything in my body. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna add an H1 element and say CSS example, so I can visually see something in here. which is good. I see something awesome. Let me know when everyone is up to this point. Just give me like a thumbs up in comments if you have your camera off. Just say thumbs up.
Yep, good.
Right on. All right. Now that we're here, before we actually start messing around with styles, we have to make sure it's linked here, right? So we mentioned using the head tag. So within the head tag, actual title, let's go ahead and make a new line. We're gonna say link. And then within the link, we have two attributes that we have to add. One is gonna be REL for relationship, which is gonna be style sheets. And the next one is gonna be href, which will be the location of our style sheets. All right. And to make sure that this is working, let's give this a try. We're going to go to our style.css, and I'm going to do something very simple, like changing the H1 tag to red. So I'm going to say H1. I'm going to give it the selector. I'm going to open up the curly braces, and I'm going to say color, and I'm going to give it red. And there we go. I see that my style sheet is successfully connected. I was able to change the H1 element to red. So everything is talking for now. Cool. Well, we should all be here. We should have something working so far. Let's talk about the CSS. So you guys can stay here. The reason why I wanted us to get here is so you can try stuff out as I'm talking through it. So feel free to experiment as we go over things. We're going to talk about the most commonly used CSS properties, right? So first and foremost, you've already seen the very first one, the most common one, which is going to be your color, right? Color is what we see the most. The H1 color got changed. We didn't even have to say font color. The element itself is the H1, the tag itself. So by changing color, it changed the font. Another one that you're going to see is going to be background color, right? So give that one a try. See how that differs from the color one. If we go in here, still within the H1 element, I'm going to go ahead and add a new line. I'm going to say background color, and this one's going to be blue. And notice that background color and color are two different things. Now, it's by default a box, right? Every tag that you have by default is going to start off as a box. Notice that the box is taking up the entire width of your screen from left to right, but the height is going to only take up enough for the content. So this is typically how most of your elements are going to work. Cool. So that was background color. You are able to experiment with these as you like. Instead of using the actual word of blue, let's try RGBA. Let's say RGBA, and let's give it 255, 100. You can give it whatever you want, but let's give it 0.5. Right. Notice that the 0.5, the last digit here, which is the opaqueness, it goes from 0 to 1. 1 makes it fully readable or seeable. If I give it 0.1, it makes it very, very light. So from 0 to 1, you can change how clear it is, I guess. I don't know if I'm using that term correctly. But yeah, let's go with 0.5 for now. Cool. So RGBA definitely, this is my favorite one. Experiment with it as you like. Once again, to show you how that works with the color picker, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the color for this background for my header by using the dropper, which I did earlier anyway. So my numbers were 57, 123, and 128. I can put it in here and see that it turns exactly to that color that we used in the slides. So I like the color picker. It's very useful. It helps you figure out different colors and whatnot. It makes it easier than Googling different color types. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So we have color and background, right? Color, background. Those are the very first one that you're going to be seeing. Another common one is going to be your text and your font, right? So changing the font sizes, and then aligning your text fonts, right? So font size changes the size of your text, obviously. Font family is going to change the style of your font. So with like Times New Roman, Arial, and so on and so forth. By default, your browser and CSS support certain fonts, but they don't have all of them. Now, we'll talk about a little bit right now of how we can import new fonts. Uh, but yeah, let's mess around with that font. Let's go ahead and let's say font size, and I'm going to set it to 50 pixels. Use pixels for now. We can talk a little bit about measurements in a little bit. But notice how I can change the font size, uh, 10 pixels. Even though it's an H1 element, I can make it smaller, right? So you can edit the element, even if the H1 is supposed to be the biggest one, you can make it even bigger, right? 100 pixels, 500 pixels. It is all up to you guys. Cool. Let's look at font type or font style. Oh, this one's like bold, italic. Font family. There we go. Font family was the font style. My apologies. I was wondering what it was. So font family will give you different types of styles that you can go through. Notice that there's some here already. These are like it's very limited, but there is some basic ones. We can go with Times New Roman, um, and it looks like that was a default for the styling, which is kind of funny. Let's try something else like Courier New. There we go. This definitely changed it. You might notice, Roger, all these font families is giving me like different options, one, two, and three. There's like three options for almost each one of these. And that's because not every browser is going to support every single font. So it is common practice that when you set your font families for your text, then you give it more than one option. In the event when someone opens up your website and you have a font set to that website that their browser doesn't support, it defaults to the other languages or the other styles you have set there, right? Which is why you see that the font family, there's typically more than just one font family there. Make sense? So font family, font style, uh, text align. That's a good one. Let's do text align. Text align. Uh, I see here I got center. Let's try center out. Notice that it moves the text from the box to the right to center on my web page here. You can do text right, put it on the right side of your screen. So you could definitely align your stuff here. There's a lot more power. There's a lot other more commands that give you more power here. But this is just very, very basic stuff, right? All right. Another one that's going to be very common is going to be your margins and padding. Margins and padding. Now, what is the difference between margins and padding? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open up my developer tools. So you guys can see what I'm doing. Uh, in Chrome and I think other tools, what you can do is you can right click and you'll get the option to press inspect. This will open up this page right here for your browser. There's a bunch of different tabs. You have element, console, sources, network, performance, memory, application. Element is going to give you the HTML breakdown of the web page that you're currently on. Notice this reflects the HTML document I have on my VS Code. But what you can do here as well is hover through different tags and it will show you by highlighting the different parts of your website. Or what you can do is in the top left corner of this screen pop up, you see what looks like a dotted box with an arrow on the bottom right corner. You click that, and this allows you to hover over the elements directly over the page to see what tag it is, right? Now, I am interested on this one tag we have here, which is the H1. Well, that is selected. I want you to look down below. You have this box. This box is a visual representation of this element, and it's going to show you where the element is, the padding, the border, and the margin. When I hover over what you call it, the center part, notice that it highlights everything. This is telling me that there is zero padding, there is zero border, and the margin is 33.500. Can you guys see this, or is it too small? Right, this box here, it's telling me exactly the sizing of the element that I'm currently highlighted over. The tag itself is 981.6 by 56.8. The padding is set to 0 on all sides. The border is set to 0 on all sides. The margin is 33.5 pixels. So you don't visually see a border or a padding right now, but this gives you a visual representation of where stuff lays. So directly outside the element, the first thing that comes is the padding, then it's the border, and then it's the margin. That's very important to note, because when we start adding these elements to our tags, you will see how that changes. Let's give that a try. For starters, let's add a border. So this is a very common one. I like using borders a lot, especially when I start creating my web page, so I can see where stuff starts and ends, because stuff starts overlapping itself or shifting left and right. So I want to see where it's at. So it's very common for me to add a border. So you do that by just using the border property. It takes 3 different values. It's going to be something like 1 pixel. So you can give it how thick it is. So I'm going to say 1 pixel. You can give it what type of border. I'm going to say solid. You can do something like dash, I think. Yeah, dashed. But I'm going to say solid. And then you can give it a color, like black. And notice there is a border now around my element here. You probably can't see it because it's very thin, but if I increase it from 1 pixel to 50 pixels, it becomes very apparent that there is a border here, right? Let's go ahead and lower this a little bit more. Let's bring it back to like 5. But I went ahead and I added a border around my element, right? So I can see here very, pretty noticeable. There is a border. If I look down here at my dev tool, notice that the border section of that item, it now says 4.8. Technically, it's actually 5 pixels, so not exactly accurate, but it's close. The border, it says there's 4.8 on each side. The margin is still there, but padding is still set to 0. Let's look at what padding does when I add padding in here. So I'm going to say padding, and I'm going to give this 10 pixels. Now, you probably didn't notice it when looking at the element, and if I remove it, it's going to get smaller, but you don't visually see it. So you see that it gets smaller, but the padding is kind of mixed in with the same color as the background. So it almost fools you that it didn't change, but really, as I change it here, I see the size does change. Well, let's look at the box back here again. If I highlight over padding, we can visually see now where the padding is. So we can see the separation between the content of my element, followed by the padding around it, followed by the border, and then the margin. So there's different layers of my element that I can manipulate. That's very important to know, right? Especially if you have a border and you want to separate the text away from your border so it's not sticking to it. You want to, just give it space so it can breathe. So you can separate stuff like images or text within there, the elements and whatnot. So it's very important to understand stuff like border, margin, padding, where stuff starts and ends. Now, when you just specify something like border and pad, or I'm sorry, when you just say border and you give it a style, or just say padding and give it a style, it's going to do everything around it. But you're actually also able to say something like padding left and give it 10 pixels, right? Or let's do 100 pixels to give you a good example. Notice that they put padding on the left side, but nothing anywhere else. Not the top, not the bottom, not the right. So you could specify where you want to add padding. You don't have to just say padding and give it everywhere around. Maybe you just want to add a little bit padding somewhere on the left side, the right side, top, below. And you could do the same thing for border, right? You want, let's say, for example, everything should be a minimum of 5 pixels, but maybe the border at the bottom should be 20 pixels, solid red. You could do something like this. It's not pretty, but you're able to give a border to everything, but then specify only the bottom part should be a little bit thicker by giving it border dash bottom. So you can do stuff like this. You can also manipulate the margin by just calling it margin, or you can say stuff like margin top, margin bottom, margin left. Let's say margin top, this will be 50 pixels, and it gets pushed down below. So you can manipulate different parts of your element using these different attributes, or as I was, properties of border, padding, and margin in different directions. Do I have any questions so far?
Nope.
What are you guys thinking so far? Interesting? Good stuff. Time is 6:27. Let's go ahead and go on our first 10-minute break. And then we'll come back and continue with today's lecture. I'll see you guys in a bit. All right, let's get back to it. We were talking about padding and margin. We went about border. Now let's actually use some divs here. We see a div here. We talked about divs already, but we have yet to use some divs. First and foremost, let me go ahead and get rid of all this styling. I don't need none of that. I'm gonna say div. We'll do 3 divs for the sake of it. The first div will have an h1. That will say header 1. The second div will have an h2. That will say header 2. And I guess you can see where this is going. We'll say header 3. Cool. Let's add some styling in here. The H1, we will do a color of red. The H2 will do a color of green. And the H3 will do a color red, blue. There we go. The div will have a border of 1 pixel. That's going to be black and solid. This is going to have a margin of 5 pixels. And I don't like how it moves on the left side, so we're going to say margin bottom. Margin bottom. We'll do 10 pixels, actually. There we go. So the divs really, they didn't really do too much, right? The H1 just went ahead and took the entire spacing of the div itself. And we manipulate everything else with the div. But the H1, the H2, they're sticking to just the space within the div. So what's the point of div? Well, divs really once again, they allow you to put items together where um, they're separate from other stuff. Uh, we can have one thing up here, one another here, another here, and they can just be within their corresponding section. It's helpful for organization, and separating different content of your page. But that's kind of how the divs work, right? I manipulated the entire div. Notice that by doing this, it affected every other header as well because each header has a div tag around it. So when you specify the tag itself, no matter where that tag is on your HTML element, it's going to be impacted. Be aware of that. We did margin, we did padding. Let's look at height and let's look at width. So we're gonna go ahead and put an image in here. What image should we use? Google. Cat memes. Hmm. Let's not do that because some of these memes can get pretty bad. Let's go ahead and take dogs. Oh, images. I remember this one. This one was really big, if you guys remember. So this might be a good one. We'll go ahead and add another div in here. Actually, let's not add a div. Let's keep it about a div first, and then we'll add the div. I might add an image in here. This image needs a source attribute, if I remember correctly. I'm gonna add the image in here. Oh Lord. That's a long. Oh, I know why. Uh, what do we do? Link address? No. Copy image address. There we go. Here's the actual image. It's pretty big. Earlier, I copied the small version of it, but this is the original picture. It's pretty big, so let's actually manipulate this so it's not as big. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna grab the image tag and let's use height. In height, I'm gonna set it to 100 pixels, and there you go. It starts restricting it. By default, it looks like it set the width as well to match it. But just for good measure, we can add 100 pixels to the width, and we see it doesn't change, so I was correct. But what if we do something like 200 pixels? Notice that I start tweaking it, right? Let's have it 200 by 200. But yeah, height and width are very useful for stuff like this, specifically images. Right on. So definitely one of those items that you'll be using a lot, specifically border, width, height, and stuff like that. Now let's talk about units. So there's multiple different units out there. I use pixels a lot, specifically for like small things here and there. But there are some very useful ones, which is going to be stuff like EM or even percentages, as well as view height and view width. So let's take we're gonna take the divs for example. Let's look at divs. Right now, the div height, it's already preset. By default, the divs here are only as tall as needed for the text inside of them to fit. Look at header 1 compared to header 2, right? There's a difference there in size. The header 1 div is significantly bigger compared to header 3. By default, it's only taking up the corresponding height it requires to fit the content. But we can preset a hard-coded height. And we can leave it to something like let's say 125 pixels. Right. And there it goes. It updates um the header, right? Uh I'm sorry, not the header. It updates the divs that are wrapping around the headers. Everything is set to 125. 125 pixels. Well, let's try some other units, right? What if we do something like 2EM? What is 2EM gonna do? Okay, that's not good. Let's do 3EM, 4EM. All right. I'm not quite sure exactly what the EM stands for, but I'll tell you how it works. The EM is going to take the original height of your element and then is going to multiply it, really kind of multiply it by the number you give it. So if I say 2EM, I'm essentially saying I want it to be twice as big as its original height. Same concept if I say 3EM, three times as big, four times as big as the original height. Um, kind of like that, right? That's kind of what it's doing here. Um, let's see if I can say something for like the height on the image. Height, let's say 0.5 EM, 0.9 EM. Is it R EM? No. This is very small.
In the example, it says it's like size of the current font. What if we change the font size? Does that play with that since it's relative?
It is a relative thing. Maybe it has a weird functionality with images. I don't know. I don't use it too often, but I know it is a relative thing. Hmm. I'll get back to you guys on this one. Now I am doubting myself. Twice size relative based on the parent element or viewport. Oh, okay, that makes sense. There's no parent element in here. Um, okay. We already have the viewport set, so we could do something like this, where we could put the image around or we put a div around the image, right? What do we say the div is? Let's set the height of the div to 150 pixels, right? And right now it's gonna overflow. So we'll set the height to 0.5 EM, and it should only take half of it. Oh, it's not. Okay. Do you hate me? No,
What I just read is that it is relative to the font size based on the letter M in the font, or capital M in the font size. So whatever font size you have, it's going to base the units on how wide the letter M is.
Okay. Um,
Whatever that means.
yeah, let's say font size. We'll set it to 50 pixels. I'll just move this up. All right, give up. I'll get back to this in a little bit. Uh, REM isn't used too often. It is a useful one. I've used it before, but I'm struggling with it right now. Um, the one that I really want to show you for sure, is going to be percentage and view height and view width. Um, so right now we have the image inside of a div, right? It's overflowing. We should be able to say something like height is equal to 50%. and it's going to take notice here. It takes up 50% of the container it's in. Because the image is inside of a div, it's only take 50% of that div. If we didn't have it inside of a div, it would take 50% of our page. So that's something to keep it to mind. But percent is awesome because, especially if you want to help scale it, it's a good way of using it. There's other ways as well, like view height, which we'll talk about a little bit. But by default, it's only going to take 50% of my freaking header or the divs. Notice as I should be able to make this smaller. Oh, it's not. Oh, it's growing. Very small. But it does grow a little bit. Probably could have the height set. Let's set height to 150 or 100. But we're gonna set the max height to 200 pixels. I guess we need to add another attribute, but I haven't gone to it yet, so I don't want to mess with it. But we'll get to it a little bit. But notice that height only took 50% of that, which is cool. We could do something else like use view height or view width, which in the name you can already tell what it implies, right? If I were to say 50 view height, you probably won't see a huge, yeah, you will see a difference. Notice that the height is no longer taking a percentage of its container, right? The view height is quite literally going to take the height of your viewports, right? Your browsers. How big is your website? Well, notice it's taking up the exact same half of that spacing. So view height is going to take the height of your viewports. If you say 50 view height, it's going to take 50% of your page. I could say 100, and you'll see it. It quite literally takes up almost the entire size of however tall my page is. So I have to kind of to show the edges for a little bit, but it will take 100 of your view height of what you have. I wonder. Yep, there you go. You see how I'm making it smaller, but still stays to 100% of the height of my page. So because I specify 100 view height, however big my browser is, that's going to be the 100% of that view height, which is pretty cool. So I love view height and view width because it's great for working with different devices. What does everybody have in their pockets nowadays? A cell phone, right? A cell phone. When someone hears about a business or of any kind of application, the first thing they do is they pull up their phone and they Google it. They open it up on their iPhone. Chances are, if anyone visits your webpage, they're more than likely going to be on a phone. So be aware of that. So you can't build a website and not take smaller devices into consideration because it's going to look like trash. I'll show you my website, for example. I could have done a little bit better, I would admit, but mine does have good. I think it's dynamic for the most part. But notice that at a certain point, my nav bar disappears and it becomes this drop-down menu. I can show you how it would look like on a phone as well. Here is, let's see, what do they have? iPhone 14 Pro Max. This is how it might look like on a phone. Pro Max, that's a horrible phone. iPhone 12. So there's different ways that you can see it is. And the term is called responsive, like how responsive is your web application, right? So you want to make sure your web application is responsive by ensuring that you use the proper uh, settings, right? View height, view width, or really height and width settings, and how things move around as your screen scrunches up or gets bigger. So view height is a good one. Besides view height, you also have view width, right? So view width and view height are a big one. Like I said, this to be 25 view height and 100 view width, right? So 100 view width is gonna get left to right and only gonna take 25% of my view width. So those are my favorite units, specifically view height, view width, and percentages. Third would be my pixels, and fourth, because I'm not that good at it, will be the REM ones or EM. But they definitely do have their usages. I've used them before. Uh, 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 all right. Does anybody have any questions? Cool. Well, let's add something real quick. Here is my image. Um, let's do something real quick. I'm gonna say height, 100%. There we go. I'm gonna add some text in here into my header one and the span. This is my example text that I will utilize to test out my new font. Cool. So let's talk about adding fonts. So there are some fonts that come with your browser and CSS that you can use, but they're very limiting. Now, there are different ways to add fonts, and as you see in the slides, this is the way to do it. Um, you would add a link, and a very common one would be to use Google. Google has Google fonts that you can do, and typically they'll even give you the code to copy and paste it. Now, quick disclaimer, I'm horrible at this one because I don't mess around with the fonts too often. So we might have to mess around with it a little bit, but we can check Google Fonts. Go to all. Here you go. Google Fonts, browse fonts. So fonts have different, what's the word I'm looking for? They make your user feel different emotions, right? A font can make or break a website. It can make it look more professional than others. If it's supposed to bring excitement, sorrow, mystery, a font can do a lot, believe it or not. So fonts are a big thing. You don't have to worry too much unless you're into like web design. Uh, but this is something to keep in mind. When you're messing around with fonts, uh, Google Fonts is a good way to start. You can go to these and find something you like. I'm gonna find something that's easy to identify of the change. We'll use this one right here. Some of these are more complex than others. They come with a lot more code. But for the sake of it, I'm gonna choose this one. When I click it, I don't use it often, so bear with me. I'm to mess around with it. It gives me two different options. It has regular 400 and actually that's all it gives me. Just regular 400. There's different sizes of it, of pixels, but this only has one as a type tester, so you could test out the type. Um, Latin language, all languages. Okay. Well, when you choose the font that you want, sometimes depending on how much use is there to the font, there might be different versions, different weights of fonts. And you can select these as you want. But when you're ready, you're going to click Get Font. And it's going to bring you to something like this. Um, Notice that I have two selected here. This is from another lecture I gave. Let me go ahead and remove this one. Oh, shoot, I downloaded it. No. Whatever. I'll do it later. Let's remove this one. I want to use shadows into light. That's the font I'm going to use. Um, Let me go back. I'm going to press on Get Embed Code. You can even see the angle brackets here. It's for HTML. All right, so we can click on this. And it's going to give me different options of how I can use this. I have web, Android, iOS, and Flutter. I'm using the web You can use an import or a link. I'm gonna go ahead and use the link here. And even tells you embed code in the head of your HTML. And then it tells you how to add it into the CSS style sheet. So it's for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. Sometimes I get some weird functionality. Some fonts don't work as I would like them to work. But let's give this bad boy a try. I'm gonna copy the code for this one, and I'm going to add this into my head here. Let's see how it looks like. So there's a little formatting issue here of indentation, but no biggie. There we go. I fixed the indentation. And then let's go ahead and I'm going to copy the CSS styling that it gave me here. And I'm going to add that to my style sheet. There you have it. And let's see if it changed anything. Moment of truth. Okay, it hates me. That's okay. Let's figure out what happened. Oh, I don't know. Um, Why do you not work?
You don't have anything in CSS for the paragraph. Could that be the problem?
It should no, I do have it. It should be changing it anyways. Maybe no, it should change it. It shouldn't matter. Let's try just in case. I'm gonna add it directly. Uh, just for the sake of demonstration for now. Oh, okay. I'll mess around with it later. I added a class to it directly, but I was able to change it. Here you see the fonts. This is my example text that I will utilize to test out my new font. It shouldn't work that way. I'm gonna add this directly to my body so I can change all my fonts. There we go. But it shouldn't have worked that way. We should have already changed it. I shouldn't have to add the class to the body. That's kind of annoying. Maybe if no, they should have worked. That's okay. But the point is, really, the point of that quick little example there was to show you that there's ways to get other fonts besides what's given to you from CSS. So if you guys are ever looking for new fonts, definitely check out Google Fonts. Some of them are free. There is licensing that goes to them. Let's see where was the section of licensing. There's definitely somewhere around here. I saw it earlier. Before you use something, make sure that you are able to use it. Like if you're trying to sell something and or make money out of your site, don't just copy work online or take pictures and images from other people and hope to use it. You need to understand that people do license some of this work. Someone did take the time to make these fonts, so be aware of stuff like that. You don't want to end up owing people money. Very cool. That should cover that part of the example. There is your quick example of how it looks like. I should have probably do something like this, H1, and then pass in the styling for that. But yeah, we could have done. Actually, this is how we can do it. We can remove the class from here, and then here I would just give in body. And I would say font family. Just pass in everything, all this directly into body. Let's see if that works. It did. Right on. Yeah, I just pass it straight into body instead of passing in the class into body. That way it just overrides everything in body. Right? This here is a class. So it gives you the way of how you can give it a class to a tag, so only that specific tag has it. You might as well just copy the entire thing and just give it straight into your body. This will change everything in your body tag. So don't just overwrite stuff right into the body, by the way. It's because you might forget that you did that directly to the body tag. Remember, body tag is where everything, all the meat and potato of your website is gonna go. So if you format the HTML, the CSS of your body, it's gonna override everything. Um, and it can be kind of annoying trying to figure out where you had the CSS at. But there you go. Cool, cool, cool. Now, time is 7:05. We're gonna take about 10 minutes to give colors.html a try. This is the student practice. Let's go ahead and open up what it looks like. It was, what was it called again?
It's
Short
under
term.
colors, I believe. It's under the
Yeah,
colors folder.
yeah. Geez, you
Right
scared me.
there. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, this is very quick. Shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. Open this bad boy with live server, and then it's already linked to the style sheet, right? So the style sheet's already connected. Really just have to open it with live server and then start styling away. Time is 7:06. Let's go ahead and come back at 7:16. I'll have someone just quickly demonstrate, and then we will move on to the next part of this class, which is going to be specificity. I'm going to pause the recording. If anyone has any questions, I'll be here for that. All right, who wants to demonstrate the final output of the assignments?
I couldn't get the font to import.
Okay. The font. What the heck? Is there a font part?
It was Roboto, font family of Roboto.
Oh, I was right. Sorry, I only see this assignment like every 4 months, so I forget what every assignment has. All right. That's okay. Show me what you got, and then we can kind of see how the roboto stuff is supposed to work. Right on. Make this text blue, underline. Ooh, it's not underlined
Okay.
for that H1. Underline should be for the property. I believe it's called text decoration. I believe text dash decoration.
Yep, I see it. Okay. Well, that just took away.
Hmm. What did
Oh,
you?
I know why. I know why.
You forgot to say my colon.
Yeah, I've read Civic.
I knew. I knew that's what it was. I told you guys. Hey, that's what it is. You're like, why is it?
I
Why?
hate
Why am
Civic.
I seeing this? I told. I knew. I called it like an hour ago. That's what's gonna happen.
Yep.
All right. Make this text purple. Bold it. Is it bolded?
I was having a hard time with that too. I couldn't even tell.
That's gonna. Okay. It should be
Is that
font
also a
weight.
text decoration? Because I did a font weight bold, but
Yeah.
it
It's
didn't.
Yeah, that's what I
right.
did.
It's probably you can't tell because it is a header, and that's okay. Headers are typically bolded for the most part. 25 pixels and
Got
have
it.
an orange border. That's good. Make the section width of 50%, height of 200 pixels, background of gray, border of black, and the paragraph text white. Awesome. Love to see it. Make this footer have a black background with light green border and this text 20 pixels white plus a font family of Roboto. Send this text on the page as well. Right on. Everything's good except the Roboto. Let's look at. Show me the Roboto on Google. What it should look like, and then we'll compare that to what you have.
You want like the code, or you want?
No, let me see the page where you get the
Visual.
code. I want to see what it's telling you to put in case you missed something.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
don't
I got you.
I don't think you did, but I just need some context. Mm. Mm, 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 mm. Are you looking for it?
Yeah, this is the embed code right here.
You
Are
can't
you
see
talking
any.
about?
I can only see the browser where your the assignment is being displayed on.
Okay. Wonder whether, let me see if it's just a share issue.
Okay, you got the embed code, the links, and then Roboto CSS class for a variable style. Okay, so it's given to you in a class, which is uniqueifier. Hold on, use a unique descriptive class name. Okay, so it's going to require you. Actually, I don't think we need this. Uh, you want to copy this and put it into like your body. Did you do that by any chance? Yeah, put it in like your body tag code.
In the CSS.
Yeah, go to your CSS and then I want you to edit the body tag
Okay.
and then add that CSS from the Roboto uniqueifier. I think it just
I
changed.
I put it in my footer area in my CSS and it worked.
Jury add it, Richard? I think it changed. Does it look different? It does, right?
Uh,
Yeah,
I'm getting a lot of errors on the thing now. Like I'm
it's
getting
working. I saw it move back and forth. It's definitely working.
oh, okay.
Well, I don't know what error you're
Yeah,
getting.
okay.
Can you show me what when you refer to errors? What do you mean error?
Yeah, it's just I'm assuming it's syntax. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's the font. Wait, line 39. Uh,
Oh, I just need to put a weight in there.
yeah, put a weight in there.
Okay, cool.
I think font
Okay,
weight is
good.
referring to something like bold. But that should be
Oh, I
fine.
got you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the only error. But yeah, that's good. It's working. So what to explain what it was giving you, it'll make a little bit more sense in a little bit, but it was giving you the style inside of a class, and we can see how that works a little bit when we talk about specificity. But time is 7:23. You guys just finished an assignment, so let's go ahead and go into our break for our second break. Come back at 7:33, and we will talk about specificity, IDs, and classes and how they work. I'll see you guys at 7:33. All right, welcome back. So the next part of today's class is going to be talking about specificity, relationships, and how we select specific elements. First, let's talk about relationships. There's two different ways here on this image that we can select things. Now, these aren't always common, but you might see them. And this is a way of selecting stuff. Check the first snippet from left to right, the first two. Here we have a section tag, and directly after the section tag, we have a p tag that says hello world. Now, how could I grab this p tag specifically? Well, you could do something very similar like this. where you can specify in your CSS that, hey, I want to grab section first, and then use the angle bracket to specify that directly after the section nested within it, it should be followed by a p tag. And this should change the color of that to red. Now, the angle bracket specifies that the p tag comes directly after the section tag. When we look at tags here, like section and the p tag, the relationship here is what we call a parent and a child relationship, right? Here, the section tag is the parent of the p tag, and the p tag is what we call the child of the section tag, because it's embedded within it, right? So here is saying section has to have a child that's a paragraph tag, and that child will have the color of red. Does this make sense so far? Cool. Now, let's see that and how that actually works, because it can get confusing. Get rid of this. Awesome. Right now, let's make all the divs or all the H. No, let's make all divs. They're all black. Cool. How do we do this? That's okay. I'll just do exactly what is showing us here. We're gonna make a section. And we're gonna do a p tag. I am a child of a section. Cool. I'm gonna say section followed by p. It will be a color of orange. Awesome. This works. Let's add another p in here. I am a second child of a section. And it works. Good to go. So both of these work because both of these are direct children of section. Now, what happens if I did something like this? Where inside of this section, I did div, and this div had a p tag that says, I am a child of a div that is a child of a section. Well, that's actually, nah, it's fine. Even though this is a p tag, notice that it doesn't change color. And that's because p is not a direct child of a section. It is a child of a div that is a child within a section. So even though this p tag is still nested within section, it's not a direct child of it. Does that make sense? So it's important to note that relationship when it comes to your CSS. This is saying that that p tag has to be a direct child of the section tag. Otherwise, that won't work. Cool. Well, what about the next one? This one is a little bit different. Notice that this section doesn't have the angle bracket directly afterwards. It's a section followed by the P, and then it's doing the color red. This one's going to give you something a little bit different. Section P, color red. I want you to notice that it changed the color of all of the P tags, even the one that was set to orange before. First and foremost, the other ones change as well because it's cascading style sheets. But the way that this works, this is saying that no matter where this P tag is located at, as long as there's a P within the section, whether it's a direct descendant or it's nested deep in there, if it's inside of a section, that P tag should be red, right? Where this one is saying it has to come directly after section, this one only means it has to be within a section, anywhere within it. It's okay. Do I have any questions of how this works? So both of these will come out to red. What about this one? This is a little
Yeah,
weird.
like the first and the second instance, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I guess that's a good way of explaining it. So it's not talking about whether it's nested or not. That one is referring to if they're both related to each other, if they're on the same level, right? So we can do here P plus P color red. Notice that the second one changes, but the first one doesn't. So this is only going to change the P tag if it's side by side with another P tag, right? But the first one is not changing it. It's only changing the second one. Well, what if we add a third P tag in here? What is that going to do? I am a third child of a section. Notice that the second one still is still red, and the third one is red now. Well, why? Well, just like the CSS stated, the P tag has to be next to another P tag for it to be red, and only that one, right? So that is correct. This one will be red because it's next to the other P tag. Well, this one will also be red because this was next to a P tag, but because this one is red because of the previous one, they're both red. Does that make sense? So the relationship's a little bit weird. You'll probably never see this one, but it's important to know how relationships work on CSS in the event you encounter it by accident. Do I have any questions on this relationship?
So basically, it's saying the second instance of it after the first,
Correct.
and then any other second instance after another first. I got it.
Correct. So you will see this. If you look up at any CSS tutorial, they'll probably talk about this very briefly. This is something that you might see. Now, we'll take about 5-10 minutes to do the relationship XML. It's not hard, but well, let me just double check. I forgot this one. Yeah, take 5 minutes to give this bad boy a try. Everything's already connected. All you gotta do is open this bad boy with live server. We're not really gonna cover it. Just give it 5 minutes to give it a genuine try before we move on. Time is 7:43. Let's go ahead and come back 7:49. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the assignment? I think it was pretty straightforward for the most part. Any roadblocks? Awesome. Okay. Uh, that was pretty straightforward. Really, what matters is the next thing to talk about, which is going to be specificity. So, IDs in classes, you've heard of them. You've probably seen them already. Um, Now, what are they used for? Well, up to this point, we have been selecting and grabbing specific elements by the element tag itself, right? H1 all the way to H6, div, right? Image. We've been calling the element itself. Now, that's not good practice, right? Because as we've seen, it grabs the all instances of that specific tag and overrides everything for it. And that's not good. You want to be able to add customization to different things. Not every button should be gray or white. Think about like a sign out button or a quit button. You might want to have a different appearance for it. It might be like red. There might be a highlight over something. Everything should have some kind of uniqueness to it. So not every button, not every div, not every image is going to be the same height, color, nothing like that. So how do we grab specific items? Well, we do that by giving it specificity, right? Now, the first two that I want to talk about, which are going to be the ones that you will use most commonly, is going to be IDs and classes, right? These are the two most common ways of how you're able to select and distinct between different elements, right? Now, which one you go with is going to depend on what you're trying to do. There's different levels of specificity, but before we get into that, this is how you use an ID or a class, right? You see here, they are added within the opening tag of an element, right, as an attribute. So we see here the p tag, they have either ID or class, and it's quite literally the moment you put the equal sign, it should give you the open quotation mark, and you give it some kind of name, right? You're naming it something that you can use to reference that specific tag itself. So that way, instead of calling all the p tags, you're going to call the class itself or the ID, and only the tags that have those classes or that ID is going to be changed. Now, these look fairly similar. Why would you use one over the other? Well, IDs are unique, right? They should only belong to one element. So you can't give the ID of zebra to multiple elements. So you want to keep that in mind. And with that in mind as well, that's going to give it a higher level of specificity. I know we still know what specificity means. We'll get to it in a little bit. But IDs are supposed to be unique. So only one element should have that ID. And when used in your CSS style sheet, when referencing the ID, you're going to use a hashtag. For classes, multiple different elements can have the same class. They're reusable. So classes are typically going to be the ones that you're going to use right off the bat, right? When you create something, the first thing you probably will give it will be a class. Those are the ones that you want to start off with. And we'll talk about when you might use one over the other or change them. When using the class, you're going to want to use a period or a dot within your CSS style sheet to reference that class. Now, how do you remember between them? I like to think of IDs. What are they? They're typically numbers, right? Like identification numbers. A hashtag typically represents like a phone number or a number, right? So I like to think of hashtags as like numbers. Classes, if you use Python or JavaScript, how do we typically use methods and functions? You haven't gotten into object-oriented programming yet, but when you create a method in a class, you usually invoke that method by using a period. So that's how I remember that classes are referenced by using the periods. Think about like the methods or functions that you use in Python, like dot title, right? Dot upper, dot split. Those are built-in methods that come from a specific class. Those are pre-built, built-in functions or classes that have those methods in Python. So you don't actually see it because it's already created for you, but they're invoked using a period. Those are technically methods that belong to a class, right? So that's how I like to remember which one is which when referencing if I'm using an ID or class. Do I have any questions about ID or class so far, how they're added into a tag or how they're called upon using CSS? Cool. I don't know what happened to Thomas, but I'm assuming he got busy. So specificity, what does it mean? Really, another word of specificity um, is really the hierarchy of what takes priority is a good way of specifying it, right? Um, there's four different ways that you can style or grab something, and each way has a a point system of specificity. The lowest level is tags. Tags, we like to say they have 1 point of specificity. Now that doesn't mean anything right now, but we use it as a way to compare it to other methods. Like for example, classes. Classes has a higher priority over tags, right? And we use a number system to display that. We say that classes have 10 points of specificity. So what does that mean? Well, because classes have more specificity, that means they take priority over a tag. So if in my CSS style sheet, I grab a P tag by the tag itself, like P, and I change the color to red, right? Um, and then I have somewhere in my CSS as well, I'm changing the specificity by using a class for a P tag. The class will trump the P tag because classes have a higher priority, even if they come before in the style sheet. That tag will not trump the class because it has lower specificity, lower priority, even if they come at different parts of the cascading effect. Classes will always trump a tag because of the level of priority, or what we like to say specificity, right? Classes have quote unquote 10 points of specificity. The next level up, or the next one or the one that has the higher priority than classes, is going to be your IDs, right? IDs, we like to say, have like about 100 points of specificity. So if I have a P tag with an ID and a class, right? We put the one with the ID first, and then we put the CSS with the class afterwards. The ID will not be overridden, even though the class below it came last, because IDs have a higher level of specificity. Therefore, they will not get overridden, right? They are for unique tags, and that's very important. The next one, which has the highest level of specificity, is going to be inline styling. We let's say they have 1,000 points of specificity, but because they have a higher priority in the style sheet, we use them very sparingly. Why? Well, if you right off the bat start adding inline styling to stuff, and then you go to your CSS style sheet and want to like change something later on, you won't be able to override that styling. And now you're gonna have to go through your HTML document, find where the heck this is at, and why it's not changing the color or the background. Well, because inline styling has a higher level of specificity, you cannot override it. You have to either remove it or just don't have it at all, right? So you do only add inline styling for like very, very unique situations, right? There is no reason for you to be adding inline styling right off the bat because you won't be able to override it later. And that happens very often, right? When you start coding, you start adding some CSS, you might want to change the color there, right? You might want to change the sizing, spacing, stuff. You don't want to hard code that straight into the HTML tag, and then you forget about it, and you're messing around your CSS, but you don't see any change on your website. You're like, why is it not changing that? Like I set the height to this, but it stays the same. It would drive you insane. So typically, you want to start at the lowest level of specificity and then make your way up. So why do we start at classes if tags are the lowest level? Well, because tags will override all tags, right? It'll change the styling for all tags. So the next best option is classes. So typically, when you make a tag and you start giving, you start giving classes out, that's where you're gonna start off. You give everything a class first. If you know you're gonna have to style it later, and then if you encounter something that needs a higher level of specificity, think about like a login button or a sign up button. That will probably have a different um color compared to other buttons, right? So just think about stuff like that. Remember that specificity matters as you write your CSS file. Elements further down your file will overwrite previous elements if they are greater than or equal to in specificity. All right. So this is a nice little picture here. This is kind of like a chart of how it looks like when it comes to specificity. Once again, the element itself or the tag, it has the lower level of specificity. As you move to the left, it increases the level of specificity, which is why we say element has like ones, level of specificity, class has 10, ID has 100, and then inline styling has 1,000, right? That's kind of how it's used to look at it. But let's look at the instructor example of specificity.html. Actually, this is the first time I'm doing the instructor example. I typically give it to you guys to try it out. But you guys can follow with me if you like. Actually, I encourage it. Let's go ahead and close all these up. And we're going to open up specificity.html. That is in its own folder. Awesome. So the link for the style sheet is already together. Let me go ahead and open this bad boy in 5 server. Cool. So we're going to work with specificity and see how it actually works. The first thing, please make only Rhino and Zebra blue, right? So here we have the HTML. It's already filled out. There's already classes here. Some of these have more classes than others, right? Some of these have classes and IDs. We're not gonna mess around with anything right now. But the first step here is to make only Rhino and Zebra blue. So here's Rhino and here's Zebra. They both have their own individual ID, and they both have a class. Now, which one would I use to select this tag within my CSS document? Am I going to use the ID or am I going to use the class? Or should I use the elements? Class.
Class.
Yeah, absolutely. Although they have their own unique ID, I don't want to start using the ID to override it right off the bat. We'll start off slow. They have their own class. We can use the class. Now, this actually has 2 classes. You might think this is one class. This has 2 classes. One class is Africa, and the second class is separated with a space. The second class is 4 legs. So be aware that you are able to give multiple classes to the same element. All you have to do is separate it by the space. So we can just select one of these. Either one will be fine, whether it's Africa or 4 legs. I don't see any other element here that has either one of these tags, or I'm sorry, classes. So we'll say Africa. Because it's a class, I'm going to use a dot. So I'm going to say dot Africa. And this was supposed to be blue. So we'll say colored blue. And there you have it. Right. We kept it so it didn't override any of the other H2 elements by selecting the class itself. Next step is to please make only Hufflepuff code. Hufflepuff is down here in the next section. It is within an article and it is an H2 element. Hufflepuff has an ID and it has their own individual classes. So whichever class I select here would work fine. I could use the ID. There's technically no wrong or right answer, but you do want to start with a class first. Either one of these is fine. I don't see any other item here that has Harry Potter, Triwizard Chat, or Badger. So whichever one you decide to go with is fine. Let's go with Harry Potter. So with a dot Harry Potter. And we had to make it what color? Gold. color, go. Right on. Cool. Next, we have to select duck with the highest level of specificity possible. So here's duck. How can I select duck with the highest level of specificity possible?
I would say use class within the H2 element. So
Yeah,
likes to quack or fight,
I could do that.
whatever that says.
Different students have told me different things. Like, yeah, either or. If you don't want to change it, yes, the highest level of specificity would be the class itself. Other students are like, well, Roger, you said that it has to be the highest level of specificity, so I'm gonna go ahead and do inline styling. People told me like I added an ID because that's higher than class. So once again, no right or wrong answer. If you want to keep it with highest level of specificity possible with what is given to you, then you're absolutely right. It's just a class. We'll grab it by the class. We can say like to quack. And it doesn't say anything about what to change it with. But it would be with one of these for sure. The fourth part states, please select Rhino with the highest level of specificity possible. How will we select Rhino with the highest level of specificity possible? Well, this one would be Rhino, right? We will select Rhino and change it. I feel like I am missing something here because there was definitely more to this assignment. And I'm wondering where it went. What happened? It's weird. I apologize for this. It should have more stuff. It's okay. I'll improvise. Okay. Uh, but you might be asking yourself, why, Roger? Why would we have multiple classes? What was the point of having multiple classes? Well, let's say both Rhino, Zebra, and we'll even give one to Unicorn. We'll say class is equal to Africa. For sure, for all animals, let's give it to Duck as well. All animals should be blue. But let's say that only animals capable of flight should not only be blue, but they should be underlined, right? So we can give likes to quack a text decoration and say underline, right? So here, all animals have the color blue, but only the animals that are capable of flight should be underlined as well, right? And I can accomplish this by giving them multiple classes, but not every class will have each. I'm sorry, not every element will have each class. Does that make sense? So I'm able to set up different standards and categories for different types of stuff. Think about it like a button, right? All buttons should be a certain size. Maybe they should have certain edges to their corners. And we'll start with all buttons being white, but only the login button and the exit button should be, green or red, whatever you want to do it. So you can give it an additional class to give it the additional styling that's unique to those characters. So that's why it's helpful to be able to pass in multiple classes here, and use them as required or as needed. That keeps you as well from increasing the level of specificity to a class when you don't have to, right? So it makes it pretty easy to change stuff in here. Do you have any questions on specificity, IDs, or classes, or any of this part of selecting different elements? Awesome. let's talk about the last part of today, which is gonna be the box model. So I kind of already started talking about this earlier, and that's the fact that everything in your browser, really your application, your website, your front end is a box. Everything. Doesn't matter if your CSS changes the color or the angle of your curves or the corners, right? Everything is a box. BBC website. Once again, to open up the developer tools, you can right click on inspect, and then you can click on this box here with the arrow, and you can hover over different stuff. Let me get rid of this. There we go. To see what it is. But notice, no matter what I choose, everything is a box. Every piece of text, from as small as like here where it says 3 hours ago to the play button here, it is a box. A box. Boxes. Boxes amongst boxes. Everything on your page is a box. Everywhere. Images, text, headers, spans, even this line here. I'm gonna find something that's curvy. The arrow, I guess, is a curve in here. It's all in a box. I want to find a circle. The logo's here. Oh, stupid ads. All boxes. Boxes, boxes amongst boxes. Boxes. These might have smoothed out corners. Boxes. Boxes. Even the extend icon. Boxes. All boxes. And that's what you need to know. Everything is a box that has a certain height and width. They have their individual padding, margin, and borders. Right. Here is a much bigger vision or version of that box that we saw in the inspect tools that I showed you guys earlier, which is this. Right. Here itself is a tag and where the content goes. Right directly outside of it will be your padding. Around the padding is going to be your border, and outside your border is going to be your margin. It's important you remember this. So when you start adding the CSS to manipulate your content, you know what you're actually messing with. Now, why is that important? Um, box model.html. So this is practice for you guys. I know it doesn't give you much to go off of. You need to start looking at everything with a box eye. Box model. All right. And really, actually, this exercise really helps you out. You're gonna start working a little bit more with the divs, but the intent right now is to see how the margin, the padding, and the borders work. So take 10 minutes, give this bad boy a try, and see, look at how the boxes work, how they interact, and how they're displayed on your border. Once you start seeing everything in boxes, it makes CSS a little bit easier to mess around with. Once we're done with the boxes, we're going to talk about how we can organize and align these boxes so stuff isn't just stacked on each other. So time is 8:14. I will see you guys at 8:24. And then we'll power through the last part of the lecture and we'll call it a night. Let me get one of you, actually, since you're already sharing, Richard, let's see yours real quick, just so someone at home can see what it looks like.
You want the page?
Yeah, just the page. And there we have it. Just for the records, as we are recording now, although the instructions say, thin red border or thick gold border, I don't necessarily mean the actual don't add the keyword thin into your CSS. It's going to be up to your discretion. You can put 1 pixel. If it's thick, make that bad boy like 20 pixels. Um, it's up to you, whatever you want to make it. Just know it's either thin or thick, either or. But awesome. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and move forward. Um, but as you can see, right, it's all boxes, right? It's all boxes. They're the margin, the padding. It's important to understand how these work with each other. But now that we understand margin and padding, and the borders, uh, I encourage you as you're working with your HTML elements, add borders. You're gonna want to add borders at a minimum. That's like my go-to every single time. As I start formatting stuff on my page, I'll add a thin border with a color, right? So I can see where stuff is starting and ending. So when I'm shifting left, right, centering, putting to the top left of a div or the bottom right, I can visually see, okay, it's doing what I want it to do. And then later on, as you progress and actually add some CSS, that's when you go in there and start changing fonts, background colors, adding shadows, curving out edges. But typically, when I'm trying to put something on my screen and focus on just the functionality, a very bare foundation of CSS is you know, borders and maybe some background colors. That's typically what I do. Once I got the functionality working, then I can go there and make it look pretty, right? Because really, something can look amazing. I can have like a virtual realistic looking calculator created, but if I press a button and it doesn't work on my browser, then what's the point of it, right? It's just a pretty image. So functionality over how it looks. Um, let's go ahead and move forward with the last part of class, which is talking about orientation, right? So we talked about the box model. You guys went to the example. You saw how everything is a box. But we have yet to learn how to mess with the alignment of any of these boxes. Now, there's a couple ways of doing stuff. Um, Nowadays, this is an old slide, but the common way of navigating with how you orient your divs are either going to be by using Flexbox or using CSS Grid. Uh, both these are good. I'm gonna tell you right now, Grid is significantly more powerful than Flexbox. 100%. Uh, there's a lot more functionality to using the Grid method. You quite literally have to, you code in CSS how many columns you want, how many rows, and what column do you want to stretch out your stuff from. Uh, it's very powerful, so you have a lot of maneuverability. But because we're just starting off, we're gonna focus off with Flexbox. I encourage you guys as you move forward with CSS and working with it, check out Grid. Grid's a great way of working with it. But we're gonna use Flexbox to keep things simple, so we can start
Is
moving. Yes, Adam.
is this how maybe like yesterday's stretch goal of the BBC website? Is this would you be able to apply this to get those boxes?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
This is where this would come into play, and that's something I was gonna tell you afterwards, guys. But I encourage you go back to that BBC website that you completed yesterday, and then implement the CSS and get it closer to looking like that BBC website. Absolutely, that's a good way to continue practicing the CSS. But we're gonna talk about Flexbox. Um, and it's gonna be very brief. Really, you kind of have to mess with it. And we have a game that I encourage you guys to play to get really good at Flexbox. Every time I teach this class, I'm telling you right now, I suck at CSS. I have to go back and study up on it every time I teach this because I when you don't work with front end often, like you get rusty on these things, man. And it happens. There's no shame on it. You guys will too. When you guys get out to the workforce, you're gonna have different things that you might specialize on. Some of you might work nothing but front end. Some of you guys might work nothing but back end. Some of you guys might go into like data analytics or data science, and that's okay. But when you work on some of the things, you get rusty on the other tools. So let's work with some Flexbox. The assignment that we have is going to be it's not here, but it should be the box one. Where's it at? Oh, practice layouts. Okay. So in your lesson 3, you're gonna have a folder that says practice layouts, and all it has is PNG files. These PNG files are literally just box layouts. And the goal, your homework for tonight, is going to be to replicate these boxes. Um, so I'm going to, which is easier. I'm going to teach you this one. I'll do this one myself, layout 2, so you guys can try out layout 1 and layout 3, because I feel like these one are a little bit more difficult than layout 2. So I'll use layout 2 as your demo, so you guys can have some kind of a challenge for the other ones. But what you're going to do is within your practice layout directory, make a new file, call it bad boy index.html, and obviously make a style.css. And you're going to generate your template here, link your style sheet in here. Awesome. And now we got something going. I'm going to go ahead and open up this index.html with 5 server. Let me go ahead and get these side by side. And we're going to try to recreate layout 2. At least I am. You guys can follow along. I encourage it. We're going to try to recreate layout 2. So, obviously, I need to be able to create, by looking at this and thinking about a box model, I have, at a minimum, 4 boxes as rows. Box 1, box 2, box 3, and box 4. These 4 boxes, their total height combined should equal to my max height, and their width should equal to my max width, right? So I should have, my entire body should encompass 4 divs. I might get 1 big div to take them all into consideration. And then this third div here should have 2 divs inside of it to replicate these 2 boxes, right? We're thinking about the boxes here. So let's try to recreate that. I'm going to go ahead within my body. I'm going to make 1 big div. It's going to be, we'll call it outer, we'll say class is equal to outer box, right? That's going to represent the entire box itself, the entire page. And this is important, and I'll tell you why later. So, as we said, we should have 4 boxes going from left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to represent my rows. So, let's do that. We're going to say div, and this is going to be a class of row. Class of row. For all 4 of these. Right? Cool. So that is my 4 rows. Now, before I continue, let's start to visualize how this looks like. I'm going to go ahead and try to grab this class. So I'm going to say in my style sheet, I'm going to say dot row. These rows should have a border of 1 pixel, solid, black. And I see here, it looks like 1 thick line. And that's because they don't have a height yet. That's okay. Right? That's okay. I'm going to say height is equal to 25%, maybe. It didn't give me anything. Let's say 25 view height. Will that do something? There we go. 25 view height. So quite literally a quarter of my view height, which is good, right? That's what it's supposed to do. It's 4 of these. For now, I'm gonna make them all the same equal size. Obviously, not all of these are the same height, right? The first one seems to be the most thinnest of them all. It looks like the height of both the first and second one equals about half of the view height. Um, so I'm probably gonna have to try to mess around with the view height in a little bit, but I can see here that I'm getting the rows how I wanted them, right? The total height combined of all four rows should equal the entirety of my page. Now I do see something here, right? There is some padding here, and I think this comes naturally with the body. So let me see if I can get rid of that in my style. I'm gonna say body. I think let's remove the margin. We'll say margin equals 0. There we go. It's the margin. So naturally, your HTML document is going to put some margin on your body tag. All you have to do is just reset it by calling the body tag and set the margin to 0. That way you get rid of that extra spacing around the outline of your box. Now it touches the edges. But it looks closer to my image, right? Well, that's cool. I got my rows for now. Uh, one of these rows, the third row specifically, have 2 boxes within it. So let's replicate that. So that third row right here, I'm going to go ahead and add 2 divs within here. And I'm going to give these classes of columns. There's going to be a class column. Class column. All right. And then in this style sheet, I'm going to say dot column. We'll say border 1 pixel, solid. We can say blue. I see it here. It doesn't have a height, so it just there. We'll say height is going to be 100%. It might be giving me some weird functionality here. I want it to be 100% of the row that it's in. Oh, no, I know exactly what it's doing. The width is going to equal 50% of the view width. There's something happening here. Let's do background color so I can see it a little bit better. I'm gonna set the background color to this to red. And there we go. So there's something going on here. What's happening here is that my boxes are stacking up to each other. And that's not good. I want them to be lined up side by side. Instead, they're kind of stacked up to each other. I'm assuming it's probably because let's say 45 view height or 40 view width. No, okay. Well, it's not doing what I want to do. I want this to be side by side, not stack onto each other. So this is where I can use something like Flexbox. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna set the row that this is in. I'm gonna set it to a Flexbox, but only this row. I don't want to mess with anything else. Actually, no, I'm gonna do it to the row because in the event other rows have columns, they should be side by side as well. So within the row tag, I'm gonna do something like this. I'm gonna say display, and I'm gonna set this to flex. So this is the flex box that I was talking to you guys about. It's going to flex it and put it side by side to fit them into the same container. But just by putting display flex. Now it doesn't make sense right now. I'll explain to you guys how this works in a little bit. By using it in a different example. But we can see here how this is working right now. Right? Now, it's not exactly how the image of layout 2 looks like, right? I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. Go through and then gives individual, maybe you can do IDs for like row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. change the view height if you want to. But you can experiment with that. But I'm gonna take this opportunity to show you more about how Flexbox works. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna add another column in here for the sake of having multiple boxes. You guys don't have to copy me. This is just so I can show you it. The height, I'm gonna get rid of the height and the width. Height is gonna be 50 pixels. Width will be 50 pixels. Let me take off Flexbox so you can see how it looks like. Right? So this should look something very similar to your BBC website that you guys did yesterday. The moment you started adding elements, right, in your HTML, like this, right, nested within each other, they're naturally just stacked up on each other. Nothing was side by side. This is the natural default reaction of what your elements will do. So we don't want that. We want to be able to manipulate them as we want. So how can we use Flexbox to manipulate the content of something? Should we add the Flexbox to the column or should we add it to the row? Is the question. Well, Flexbox allows you to manipulate the content of a tag. So if I want to move the squares, should I add Flexbox to column or row? Well, it's going to be a row because row is the content of row is the columns, right? Here's the row. What's inside of the row tag? 3 different column tags. So the columns themselves is the content of row, right? Does that make sense? Let's get rid of that for now. I don't want to confuse y'all. So because of that, I'm going to add display flex into the row because I want to align the content that's inside of row, which is the columns, and make them flex to side by side, right? That's the default reaction the moment you add flex. Now, after you add this ability to the row, you can use flex commands like flex direction. By default, it's set to row, but I can set it back to column, and it moves it back to how it was earlier, right? But flex by default is set to row. I could say something like justify content, and I can center the content of the item within my flex box to center it. Now, there's other commands or other values that go to justify content. I think I can do something like end. It should go to the bottom right. Oh, okay. I guess it goes to the top right. What else is here? They have flex and same thing. Okay. Align items. I can say and as well. It should be in the bottom right now. Cool. Let's say instead of just by content, let's get rid of this. What does align items do? Align items will center it vertically. Justify content will center it horizontally. Centers vertically. Is it 1L? Oh, I'm dumb. So align item lets you manipulate the content up and down. Justify content allows you to manipulate it left and right, horizontally. Right? I can say other stuff for justify content because it's going horizontally. If I say end, where would it go? If it's horizontally and I say the end, it's going to go to the far right of the from the left to right, it's going to go to the very end. Make sense? Since it's horizontally. If I say end on a line item which is working vertically, the end is going to refer to the bottom, right? So align items is up and down. Justified content will be left and right. Make sense? Now there's other commands that go to this too. Not only am I centering it from left to right using justified content, but I can say something like space between. Oh, it didn't do it. Space evenly. What are you doing? Stand by. Is it have it on end here? Space around, space evenly, space between. There we go. So notice how justified content you can do stuff like that. Let's do space evenly. And then I'm going to say end. Okay, because of the end. All right. Horizontally. I can't space it evenly if I'm putting it to the end. It doesn't make sense. It's overriding. If I'm push everything to the end, how is it going to be spaced evenly? That's why it's not working properly. But I could space things evenly. Line items, I can space them evenly and put them to the bottom. I can mess around with it even further. I can say flex direction column. Watch how this messes it up. Boom. So it starts moving things pretty wonky. It takes practice to get really good with this, but there's ways to manipulate it to different points of um, your boxes, right? The important part is you need to understand where you're going to put display flex and what is flex direction or what is display flex actually manipulating. Display flex is going to manipulate the content inside of row. Well, what's inside of row? Well, other columns. Make sense? So with that information, you should be able to handle everything else. Really, you don't even need display flex too much. The moment you put flex, it'll align them up because the default reaction of display flex is to put stuff in a row. But I would argue to mess around with this, make some boxes and mess around with it. But if you really want to get some good bang for your buck for your time, what I highly recommend that everyone does is going to be if you go into the README CSS file here, you're gonna find a couple of links. Actually, it's not this one. It's the README inside of Intro to CSS. So there's a README underscore CSS that's in lesson 03. But if you go deeper into the folder of Intro to CSS, there's another README in there. That's the one you want to look at. That one has a link that I want everyone to try, which is the Flexbox game. It's called Flexbox Froggy. This game is pretty dope. It allows you to practice your Flexbox using this frog here. It tells you the commands and it shows you how to do them. Right. For example, here I'm practicing justify content, which as we talked about, it works left and right. So you quite literally type in justify content, flex n, and then it moves your frog to the right, and then you're able to progress. Right. This one should be justify content center. All right, it tells you all the ones you can use. This one should be space evenly, I believe. Justify content, space evenly, or center. Space between. Because the frogs also matter. space. Why was the other one? Space between, space around. That's what it was. Space around. Okay. So there's three of them: space around, space evenly, space between. I like this one because it's pretty straightforward. I get more complex, like for example here. No, this one's still fine. This one should be justify content, display, or space between. There you go. It gets confusing or difficult when you start working with the other ones, like this one. The order is different. Right, so this would be justify content. It should be something like flex end. Um, or column reverse, actually. Row reverse. Oh, flex direction, my bad. Flex direction, row reverse. There we go. I'm a little rusty myself, but I highly recommend this one. This one is flex direction should be column. There's 24 challenges here. So if you want to try out Flexbox before you get deeper into the weeds of opening up and mess around with the different divs and whatnot, this is a great start. So start off with Flexbox Froggy and then definitely mess around with the BBC website. This one will get you, pretty far in understanding of how Flexbox works. It gives you the definitions of what exactly the commands do, and lets you try it and mess around with it while visually seeing it too. So pretty cool. Mm-mm-mm. There is some other stuff here, like watching videos, but personally, I think Flexbox Froggy gives you more bang for your buck for your time, so you don't waste too much messing around with stuff. But yeah, so for tonight or tomorrow afternoon, morning, whatever you guys are doing, I would target Flexbox Froggy and then finish off your layout 1 and 3. Um, to make sure you have a general understanding of working with boxes. Once you get those knocked out, then definitely go check out the BBC website again and see if you can make it look even closer to what it looks like. And tomorrow, because we are now officially done with CSS, we're going to be going into adding JavaScript. So we'll go into a JavaScript crash course. We'll probably spend all day tomorrow doing JavaScript. And then Monday we'll come along and we'll add JavaScript to all the websites we've been doing. So how we can make a button work and do stuff. So next week we'll start bringing it all together and start making like small little applications, like small little websites. And then by the end of next week, we should be building a resume portfolio website, which is pretty cool. And that is going to conclude today's class. We'll go ahead and pause recording.